You'll never be as valuable as your sister. Have you ever heard something so calm, so casual, that it cuts deeper than shouting ever could? Because that's exactly how my mom said it. No anger, no hesitation, just certainty. I remember the moment so clearly. I was mid-bite, fork halfway to my mouth, when the words landed. And just like that, the entire room went silent. Let me set the scene. It was supposed to be a celebration dinner at my parents' house. My older sister, Vanessa, 29, had just gotten promoted. Again. Bigger title, bigger salary, bigger applause from everyone at the table. And me? I'm Lena, 26. I work in accounting. I pay my bills, I keep things stable, nothing flashy, nothing worth celebrating, apparently. The table was full. My parents, a couple of relatives, Vanessa glowing at the center like everything revolved around her, which honestly, it kind of always had. At first, it was the usual. Compliments flying at Vanessa. "You've always been destined for success. We're so proud of you." Then the subtle comparisons started creeping in. My mom smiled at me and said, "Lena, you could learn a thing or two from your sister." A joke, right? Except it didn't feel like one. And then came the line, the one that changed everything. "You'll never be as valuable as your sister." No one laughed, no one corrected her, not even my dad. He just stared down at his plate like he didn't hear it. And Vanessa? She didn't say a word. She just smirked. Now let me ask you something. What would you have done in that moment? Stayed quiet? Forced to smile? That's what I used to do. But not this time. Because for the past year, I'd been noticing things, small things at first, numbers that didn't make sense, money that didn't add up. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. Then I started tracking it, quietly, carefully, without telling anyone. And what I found? It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was a pattern. So when my mom said I wasn't valuable, something in me snapped. I slowly put my fork down. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. I stood up, looked straight at her, and said, "Then she can start paying back the money you stole." The room didn't just go silent, it froze. My mom's face drained of color, my sister's smile vanished. My dad finally looked up, but not at me, at her. And in that moment, I knew. They knew exactly what I was talking about. And what happened next? That's where everything started to fall apart. What no one at that table knew was that I had proof. Let me take you back, because this didn't start at that dinner. This started a year earlier with something so small I almost ignored it. Have you ever noticed something that feels off, but you convince yourself it's nothing? That was me. My mom, Diane, 54, had asked for help organizing her finances. It wasn't unusual. I work in accounting, so I've always been the responsible one, the one people go to when things get messy. So I said yes. At first, everything looked normal. Bills, savings, expenses. But then I noticed something strange, a withdrawal from an account that was partially linked to me. Not a huge amount, just enough to make me pause. I asked her about it. She laughed it off, said it was a temporary borrow. "I'll put it back," she told me, like it was nothing. And I believed her. Because she's my mom, right? But then it happened again. And again. Small amounts at first, then bigger ones. And every time I asked, there was a new excuse. "Your sister needed help with rent. It's just until next month. You know how hard things are right now." But here's where it didn't make sense. If things were so hard, why was Vanessa suddenly living better than ever? New apartment, nicer car, weekend trips she never used to take. I started paying closer attention. Quietly. No accusations, no drama, just observation. And what I found started to bother me because the numbers didn't just feel off anymore. They were off. There were transfers that didn't match any explanation, money moving in ways that didn't line up with what I was being told. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I started documenting everything: dates, amounts, destinations, every transaction. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid, that there had to be a reasonable explanation. But deep down, I think I already knew. And the worst part wasn't even the money. It was the feeling that something was being hidden from me, that I was being managed. Like my role in the family wasn't to be respected, but to be used. And my dad? Every time I tried to bring it up casually, he'd shut it down. Don't make a big deal out of nothing, Lena. Nothing. That word stuck with me. Because if it was nothing, why did it keep happening? Weeks turned into months, and the amounts? They weren't small anymore. They were adding up, fast. Until one night, I sat down, added everything together, and just stared at the screen. Because the total wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was over $42,000 gone. And when I traced where it actually went, that's when everything got worse. Because the money didn't just disappear. I found exactly whose life it was funding. And the worst part? My sister knew. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. Because finding out the money was gone was one thing, but realizing where it went and who benefited from it, that hit differently. When I traced the transactions, they didn't just vanish into some unknown account. No, they were tied directly and indirectly to Vanessa's expenses. Rent payments, car installments, even deposits that lined up perfectly with her weekend trips. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I kept asking myself, is this coincidence? Am I reaching? But how many coincidences does it take before it becomes a pattern? So I decided to confront her. Not at dinner, not in front of everyone. Privately. It was a week before that dinner night. I went to her apartment, the same one she always bragged about, the one I now knew I had unknowingly helped pay for. She opened the door, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. And I remember thinking, how can she look this normal? I didn't waste time. I asked her directly, do you know where Mom has been getting the money to support you? Her smile faded, but only slightly. Then she crossed her arms and said something I'll never forget. Why does it matter? She's helping me. That's what family does. No denial, no confusion, just justification. I pushed harder. I told her the account was linked to me, that it was my money being moved. And that's when her tone changed. She rolled her eyes. Lena, you're being dramatic. You're always like this, turning everything into a problem. Always like this? I felt something crack inside me. I asked her one last question. Did you know it was coming from my account? And she hesitated. Just for a second. But that second, that was enough. Because then she said, I assumed Mom had it handled. It's not my responsibility where it comes from. Not her responsibility. So benefiting from it was fine as long as she didn't ask questions? That's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't confusion. This was a choice they both made. And somehow, I was the only one expected to stay quiet about it. I left her apartment that night with one thing clear in my mind. If I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would. So I did something they didn't expect. I locked down my accounts, every single one. And then I went a step further. I spoke to a legal advisor, not to start a war, but to understand the truth. And what I learned, it changed everything. Because those small transfers, they weren't just unethical. They could be considered fraud. I sat there, staring at the documents, asking myself one question. Am I really about to expose my own family? I didn't want to. I really didn't. So I made a decision. I wouldn't say anything unless they forced me to. And for a while, they didn't. Until that dinner. Until my mom looked at me and decided, again, that I was less. And the moment I spoke up, everything shifted. Because back at that table, after I said those words, my dad finally looked up. And what he said next, I never saw coming. My dad didn't defend her. He just looked down and said, "Lena, maybe we should talk about this privately." Privately. Of course, because that's how this family worked, right? Smile in public, hide everything ugly behind closed doors. But not this time. I shook my head slowly and said, "No, we're talking about it now." And just like that, the tension snapped. You could feel it in the air, thick, heavy. Everyone frozen in their seats, waiting to see who would break first. So I did something they definitely didn't expect. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, printed bank statements, every single one. You could hear the papers as I set them on the table. That soft, deliberate sound, it cut through the silence louder than shouting ever could. Vanessa leaned forward first, trying to act unfazed. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You're seriously bringing paperwork to dinner?" I didn't even look at her. I looked straight at my mom. "Do you want to explain it, or should I?" Her face tightened. For a second, I thought she might deny everything again. But then her expression shifted, from shock to anger. "How dare you go through my finances like this?" she snapped. There it was. Not denial, deflection. And that told me everything. So I opened the folder and started laying it out. Dates, amounts, transfers. I didn't rush. I didn't raise my voice. I just presented the truth. "This transfer," I said, pointing to one line, "covers Vanessa's rent in March. This one, her car payment in June. And these," I flipped the page, "multiple withdrawals over the past year, all from the account you had access to, under my name." Now Vanessa's composure started cracking. "Mom," she said, her voice suddenly smaller, "you said it was handled." Handled. That word echoed. And my mom? She didn't answer her. She looked at me like I had just betrayed her. "You gave me access. You trusted me with that account." Exactly. I trusted you not to use it like this. For the first time, my dad spoke again, but it wasn't what I expected. "Lena, maybe we can figure something out," he said quietly, almost pleading. Figure something out? After a year of silence? After $42,000 disappeared? I felt something shift inside me, right then. The hesitation I'd been holding on to? Gone. I said, "I already did." And then I dropped the one they weren't prepared for. I spoke to a lawyer. Silence. Real silence this time. No excuses, no interruptions, just the weight of what that meant. Vanessa's eyes widened, my dad went pale, and my mom, for the first time all night, she looked scared. That's when I said it. "I gave you time to tell me the truth. Now I'm deciding what happens next." And that's when she finally broke. Her shoulders dropped, her voice changed. Soft, defensive, almost desperate. "You don't understand why I did it." And in that moment, I knew the truth was finally coming out. "You don't understand why I did it." That's what my mom said. Quiet, almost pleading. And for a second, just a second, I wondered if there was some explanation that would make all of this make sense. There wasn't. She took a breath and finally said it. "I was helping your sister. She needed it more." That was it. No confusion, no mistake, no accident. A decision. A deliberate, repeated decision to take money from me over time and give it to Vanessa because in her eyes, Vanessa's life mattered more. She went on to explain it like it was reasonable. "You're stable, Lena. You're responsible. I knew you'd be fine. Vanessa, she needed a push. A push? $42,000 isn't a push, it's a choice. And in that moment, everything became painfully clear. This wasn't just about money, it was about how she saw me. Less important, less deserving, less valuable. I felt it hit all at once. The anger, the hurt, the years of being overlooked. But instead of exploding, I felt something else take over. Clarity. You didn't just take money, I said, my voice steady. You decided I mattered less. And no one argued with that. Not even Vanessa. Because now she couldn't pretend anymore, not when everything was laid out in front of her. And then came the part that actually changed everything. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten, I set terms. I want every dollar accounted for, and I want a repayment plan in writing, legally binding. My dad tried to step in. Lena, let's not make this worse. But I cut him off. It's already worse. And for the first time in my life, I didn't back down. Within 2 weeks, everything shifted. I followed through, got a formal agreement drafted, every transaction documented, a repayment schedule set. My mom signed it. She didn't have a choice. Vanessa, she unraveled. Turns out, when the support stops, reality hits fast. She had to give up the apartment, sell the car, cancel the lifestyle she thought she earned. And suddenly, I wasn't the less valuable one anymore, just the one who saw the truth first. My dad tried to fix things between us, but something had changed. I couldn't unsee his silence, his complicity. So I created distance, not out of revenge, out of self-respect. Months later, I was sitting alone in my apartment, quiet, peaceful. No tension, no comparisons, no expectations I didn't ask for. Just me. My accounts were secure, their repayments had started, slowly, steadily, things were being restored. But more importantly, so was I. Because for the first time, I stopped trying to prove my value to people who had already decided it face. And I realized something simple, something freeing. I was never less. I was just the one they thought they could take from. Not anymore.